Welcome to the PODcast, the Pride of Detroit podcast, here live on Twitch, live on YouTube, coming to you from whatever podcasting feed you enjoy. We're available everywhere. My name is Jeremy Reisman. I am back from Orlando. The owners' meetings barely made it back, but back ready to talk about that. By the way, you can find me at Detroit Online on Twitter. With me to help break down some of the things we learned at the owners' meetings, talk a little bit news and league news, new rules. We're going to go Bill Maher style, new rules, except we're not going to be as obnoxious and pompous. I'll just say obnoxious, maybe a little pompous. I tend to get a little pompous about the rules. I'm not going to lie. Anyways, here to talk to me, here to break that down, is the senior editor of Pride of Detroit, is at Ryan_POD on Twitter. Ryan Matthews is here. How we doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Did you go check out Disney World or what?
No, I drove through it because that's where Google Maps told me to drive through, because when you live in Orlando, sometimes you just drive through Disney World, I guess.
Wow, I took a shortcut right through Magic Kingdom, huh?
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? A little bit of magic at the owners' meetings.
Yeah. I'll say this. The owners' meetings might be my favorite off-season event.
So it's like the opposite of the Senior Bowl.
Yes. No, it's an enlightening event. It's fun. It's normally somewhere sunny, which is nice. This was only my second one, but it's very enjoyable because you essentially get at least 3 media sessions, and they're all like 30 minutes long. So you get to sit down with Rod Wood for 30 minutes and pepper him with questions about pretty much anything. You get to sit down and sort of kind of have breakfast with Matt, oh my gosh, Dan Campbell. Listen, I'm sleep deprived. I came in at 3 a.m. last night. And speak with him for 30 minutes, and then you get to sit down with Brad Holmes for a full 30 minutes. And it's a tighter group of Detroit media. They tend to ask better questions, and you don't have those people that come in and ask, softballs and ask for the millionth time, questions that have been answered. And so it's super informative. You also get to do that swanky party thing that I mentioned in the last podcast, which is also a cool way where you can just like talk off the record with a bunch of stuff. And so that's kind of where I want to start. I want to talk about everything that we learned in all those media sessions because they're always super informative. And I guess we have to start with Cam Sutton just so with it. I mean, I guess we're not quite closing the book on it, but there was certainly an unexpected development, and it actually didn't even happen when we talked with Rod Wood. It happened after that when Dan Miller had a one-on-one with him right afterwards, and Rod Wood drops a relative bombshell that when Cam Sutton's arrest warrant went public via social media, he was inside the Lions facility, just working out, doing an off-season workout, and that it's an odd twist, but in a way it almost felt a little relieving because we didn't know where he was at all. We didn't know about his overall well-being, and it's good to know that at least one point, like, he was at least doing okay enough to be going about his business, which is also a very strange thing to be doing given his situation.
Yeah, it feels like a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, right? Where it's like, right. Okay, I'm glad that the guy's okay, but also like, hopefully he's taking the team's advice and going to eventually turn himself in because, and you and Chris covered it on your last podcast talking about just Cam Sutton's overall situation, but it's like, it's bigger than football at this point, right? I would venture to guess that Cam Sutton's professional football career might be over. That's nothing more than speculation. But considering the severity of the accusations and how things are playing out currently in Detroit, and Cam Sutton's age, I think there's a lot of things that kind of just point in the direction of let's worry less about Cam Sutton's professional football career and more so about the legalities and the realness of the situation that's going on beyond the facility at Allen Park, where he was when, like you said, the Lions learned about his arrest warrant and all of that stuff that entails. But I think, Jeremy, the thing about Cam Sutton, right, is moving on from that situation. And I know the Lions aren't necessarily moving on. There's a lot of things that are probably going to drag out for like longer than a calendar year, right?
Sure.
the question then becomes replacing Cam Sutton,
Right.
For the 2024 Detroit Lions. And speaking of a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, we got a little bit of some different answers from the people in charge when it comes to the cornerback room.
Yeah, it was pretty odd because obviously Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have been, aligned in just about everything they've done, and that doesn't mean they never disagree. I'm sure that happens, but in publicly speaking, seems like they're always lock and step. And we have breakfast with Dan Campbell, and he's asked about cornerback. He's like, oh yeah, like that's still a need. That's still something we're pursuing. We might even sign a guy before the draft. Blah blah blah. And you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. You lost a potential starter that you probably weren't expecting to lose. You're still in the market. Great. That makes sense. And then you go to Brad Holmes, who's like, we did everything in free agency. We fixed everything. We're great. Quarterback, nah. We got Amik Robertson and we got Carlton Davis. We're good there. And it's just like, okay. Like, I like the confidence. And in a way, like, he's right, because the one thing that they both did say is, like, they did not expect to get both Amik Robertson and Carlton Davis. That was something where it felt like an either-or situation. They thought when they got Carlton Davis that Amik was going to be like, no, thanks. I came here to be a starter, and there's clearly not a starting job available for me. And instead, to Amik's credit, he's like, sign me up. I'm ready to go. I'll compete my way onto this roster like I did in Vegas. And basically Brad said the same thing, is they did not expect to get both those guys. So I think you can fairly say that how they approached free agency and how they were able to get those two guys softened the blow. But do you fall on one side or the other? Are you like, no, you got to get a corner? Or are you like, listen, they have three guys that can compete for a starting job, three guys that are probably capable of starting if healthy. That's not a luxury that a lot of teams have. So maybe that is enough, and they don't have to get another corner. They don't have to draft a corner early.
I think one thing, right, is that it's probably a healthy thing to have Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes disagreeing, not specifically to the situation, right, but like
on
it's
something
healthy to have, yeah, it's healthy to have a little bit of like, back and forth between two guys, right? But I think specific to this situation, there's a little bit of Brad Holmes like, oh, free agency was an A+. I knocked it out of the park. The only thing I need to do is take care of Josh Reynolds, which we'll get to in a minute, right?
Yeah.
But I think from Dan's perspective is like, well, there's a lot of work to do, and I don't really know how the cornerback room is necessarily going to shake out when it comes to the depth chart. With Brad Holmes, there's probably a little bit of like, dude, I've done a ton. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
look at all the legwork that I've done. The Carlton Davis trade and Amik Robertson signing. Even if it is just getting Emmanuel Mosley back in the door, it's like, oh, I'm doing a lot of work here. And Dan's like, well, we still got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's how I kind of read this situation. I don't necessarily see it as like them not seeing eye to eye, and I don't think that you're suggesting that either. But correct. I think that there's a little bit of like, Brad's like, dude, I've done a ton of work. And Dan's like, no, there's still a lot of work to do. I think that they would both agree on that, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's less room for a veteran corner on this roster right now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like signing Robertson, making the deal for Carlton Davis, even with Cam Sutton on his way out, I still think that there's enough on this roster going into the draft that let's see where the chips fall in the draft, right? Let's see how high of a priority it is, or just how the board falls. And maybe the Lions luck into a guy at 29 that they really like, or maybe even they move up a little bit, or maybe they wait for day two and they get a guy, early day two that feels like, okay, this guy can push the top of the depth chart. Then you kind of see where the chips fall, and maybe another veteran corner or two makes sense for this roster in terms of the training camp and in terms of fleshing out that entire position, because you don't know where Emmanuel is necessarily in his rehab, and you don't know how early you could potentially count on him returning to the fold. So again, it seems silly, right? But I think with me, you got to wait and see how the draft plays out now. And at first it was, well, you got to see how free agency plays out before you start talking about the draft. And now it's like, well, you got to wait to see how the draft kind of plays out before you kind of move forward with how you view this cornerback room, Jeremy, as a quote unquote work in progress, or the job's done. Yeah,
no, I think that's a really smart observation too, because I think people think that free agency, once the draft hits, free agency is completely over. And that's not really necessarily how it works. A lot of times you will kind of patchwork your holes, your weak spots free agency. I mean, the Teddy Bridgewater signing happened after free agency. I believe the Bugs initial signing, Isaiah Bugs, was signed after the draft, I believe. So those things will happen. And especially like if you're one of those people that like, give me Stephon Gilmore. He's the kind of veteran that it would not surprise me if he doesn't sign until training camp. And so, yeah, if the Lions don't go corner in the draft, the right guy isn't there, they could very well plug a hole with someone after the draft. And looking at the roster, like they lost Kendall Vildor, they lost Will Harris, they lost Jerry Jacobs, you lose Cam Sutton, you lose Chase Lucas. Like that's 5 guys. They haven't replaced all that. There needs to be at least depth. So even if they don't get a starting capable guy, they need special teamers. They need guys that'll fill out the roster. They need bodies for training camp. So they will add to the cornerback position. They might draft one highly. I don't have a feeling one way or another. But again, I'm not approaching the draft, at least in my mind, of what the Lions are going to do. They have to fill this. They have to get this player. They have to get this. They could fall in love with the player, but I don't think they're going to go into the draft thinking we need a corner, we need an edge, we need a wide receiver. That's just, I mean, Brad Holmes can only say it so many times. They're going best player available, and so if the corner that they like isn't there, they're not going to draft a corner. Simple as that.
Yep, and that's the luxury of drafting well.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the luxury of having your roster in the position that it's in, that you can kind of take that approach. But I mean, let's talk about that approach, right? Like part of it was free agency. And like we said, Brad Holmes saying this free agency, he checked all the boxes, sans Josh Reynolds. But how do you feel about those comments? Like we haven't heard Brad Holmes this confident about a free agency.
Yeah.
And specifically a guy who talks a lot about, you don't win football games in March.
Right.
You don't win football games this early in the process.
Who cares if you win headlines this early? And he's out there making headlines of his own saying, we were perfect, by the way.
Right.
Every single plan A.
So what I guess, like from being at the owners' meetings, what is kind of the tone and the tenor of those comments, and where do those carry weight for you?
Because this team has been so transparent through it all, I think those words carry weight. I don't think that is just Brad Holmes, like, I don't know, trying to sell tickets, right? I think he truly believes and is being quite honest that, hey, this is what we planned to do, and this is what we did, and we got it, and everything worked. And listen, if he wasn't being honest, why would he even mention Josh Reynolds? Because
great point. Yeah,
he struck out on that one. Like he didn't, as I put on Twitter, like
baseball analogies. There we go.
He lost his perfect game after calling it out. And so and listen, everything made sense, right? I don't think there was a move out there that the Lions made where you're like, that's weird. I don't get that. Like Carlton Davis, and I want to talk a lot about him because I came away with a lot of very positive takeaways of Carlton Davis. Makes a lot of sense. Amik Robertson is a perfect fit in terms of character, in terms of kind of play that he has. DJ Reader, like how can anyone look at that pick and not think, wow, you are getting a veteran leader who is going to continue to make sure this team has a good run defense, and on top of that, provide some splash in pass rush. And then, I mean, what else? Like Zeitler makes 1,000,000%. He was one of the guys that I predicted them to actually get, and they got him. Like all of it makes
Marcus Davenport makes a ton of sense.
Yes. And so listen, the criticisms you can make about Brad Holmes' free agencies are the ones you can always make about him, which is again a little bit of over reliance on injured players. But we had a long discussion with Holmes about that too, and he's just like, listen, this is football. Just because a player, I mean, I'm very loosely paraphrasing him, but I think his overall point was, players are going to get injured. We can't really predict who. Yes, these guys are coming off injuries, but other guys are going to get injured. These guys might get injured. Like there's not really a way. To me, it seemed like a rejection of injury proneness. And that's something I've actually pushed against too. I think in general, some of that stuff tends to be overblown. Now, if it's, your same knee that's getting blown out year after year after year, that's different, but that's not really the case with any of these guys. DJ Reader has had the same injury, but on different knees. Same with Emmanuel Mosley, right? Same injury, different legs. So, I take Brad Holmes at his word that he really does think he knocked it out of the park, and I kind of think he did too. There's still some holes to fill and some depth to be had. That the Lions definitely need a safety. They definitely need, I would say, at least 2 reserve offensive linemen. But in terms of like hitting their major needs, which was always the primary goal, the Lions did it, and they did it with guys that make a ton of sense. And whether they work or not, we'll see. Sometimes it's injury proneness. Sometimes, maybe Reeder is hitting an age in which he's going to have some backslide to his career. But on paper, everything the Lions did made so much sense to me that, yeah, of course I'm going to believe him at his word when he's like, these were all of our plan A's and we hit them all.
Yeah. And I'm really not trying to drink the Kool-Aid so much, but you get Robertson at like a lot of these players that Holmes targets, he's getting them at the right juncture of their career, right? Mm-hmm. Amik Robertson is on that upward trajectory. You have an opportunity for him to play his way into a bigger role. Maybe that's why Robertson, the player, kind of viewed this as like a perfect marriage, right? Like there's opportunity for me to take my career to the next level. With Marcus Davenport, injured. But I think the one thing that we can all agree on is that maybe Holmes will probably shy away from guys with Achilles injuries because I think he's been burned enough on that front.
Sure.
But, and again, that's just such a unique injury that the way that it saps your athleticism is just wild. But even with a guy like Marcus Davenport, there's enough to go off there where, again, you're getting the guy at the right juncture of his career where he did sign that prove-it deal in Minnesota. It didn't work out, but there's still clearly a lot of juice left in the tank. Right. It's worth another swing. And if Holmes misses, what's going to be the worst thing that comes out of it? Because we've seen what this team is capable of doing on defense. And I know it's not the best indication, right? We understand that this team is going to win football games with their offense, with their ability to dictate tempo and flow and control a game on offense. On defense, we saw this team a half away from the Super Bowl with the defense they have, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, what's going to be the drop-off in play from Cam Sutton to Carlton Davis? Hopefully there is no drop-off, right? Like, right. We saw that the way that Cam Sutton played down the stretch. Kendall Vildor, right? Like, I think, again, the floor is being elevated.
Yeah.
And the floor is being elevated in a way that Holmes can take these swings in free agency, and if they hit, holy crap, this defense could look way better than it did last year. If it doesn't, there's still a draft to be had. There's still that, end phase of free agency where, like you said, if Stephon Gilmore is a guy that they want to bring in, it's very much going to be like the Teddy Bridgewater situation, right? You have quarterbacks who are waiting to see, hey, our team's taking a guy in the draft where you're not necessarily going to be the number 2 guy.
Yeah.
I think a guy like Gilmore wants to see, like, hey, what is that room going to look like? If you take a guy at 29, there's not a lot of room for a guy like Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah.
If you don't take a guy until day 3, there might be some room for Stephon Gilmore there, right? So, I again, I don't want to drink too much of the Kool-Aid, but I do think that Brad Holmes has done a very tactful job of addressing free agency in a way that makes sense for this roster. And I'm very happy with it. Like, I think that he has every right to kind of beat his chest and be like, and I think it's a little bit less outward and showy. I think it's more, again, to what you said, the transparency of it, right? Like, why would he come out and say, hey, I checked all my boxes in free agency, minus Josh Reynolds, we're still trying to work that out, right? Why would he come out and say all those things if he didn't truly mean it?
Right. The last thing I want to say about his free agency, and this is kind of something that's been rattling around my head for a while, is that I think Brad Holmes has become kind of an expert at buy low, sell high. Because the kind of guys that he's targeting are guys that are, potentially good, but like, it's like the dented can section, right? 50% off of DJ Reeder because he's coming off an injury. You're getting Carlton Davis just before you're going to have to pay him, so you might not have to spend a ton of draft resources, a third, and you're getting a couple draft picks back. And he comes with some injury questions. Marcus Davenport, the Vikings bought high. They had to pay him $14 million. The Lions only had to pay him what? I don't remember what it ended up being.
6.5.
6.5? Right. And then you sell high. You're like, oh, okay, Josh Reynolds, you want 2 years, $12 million? We paid 2 for 6 last time we signed you.
Yep.
Jonah Jackson, you're on a rookie deal. Great. Can't afford you now. And I mean, you look in the past, and it's all been like that, right? They haven't taken a ton of. I mean, really, Cam Sutton is the only buy high situation. A guy who was kind of coming up on his career. Even like Amika Robertson might be a little bit of a buy high situation, but in general, like it's still a relative. Like he's only trying to hit doubles here, and maybe the ball slips behind. We're doing a lot of baseball analogies because it must be on the mind. Maybe it slips between the outfielder's legs and you turn it into a triple.
Yeah, maybe it's an inside the park home run.
Yeah,
right. But I think even in that situation, right? If Marcus Davenport has an awesome year, he meets all those incentives, I don't think Brad Holmes would have any problem with letting him walk on some 4-year, $75 million deal he gets in free agency.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
he would absolutely let him go. Like, there's no question in my mind that they. And listen, that to me, that should also draw in some free agents. If you can like say, hey, look, we're turning these guys out. Look what Jamal Williams got. We weren't going to buy that. But hey, you come in here, spend a year or two here, ball out, you'll leave with a 4-year deal.
Yeah,
somewhere else.
Go pick somewhere sunny and get a bag.
That's right. Exactly. I mean, DJ Chark, another one, right? It just
it's Carolina, but I'm sorry.
It's sunny there sometimes. Sometimes it's really cold and their field sucks.
Sometimes it's rainy and wet from the owner's box as Dave Tepper throws a drink on you.
All right, we're off the rails here. Let's take a break. When we come back, I do want to talk a little bit more about Carlton Davis. We should probably talk a little bit about Brian Branch, and then we're going to get into Josh Reynolds, some of the new rules, and everything else from the NFL owners' meetings that was this past week. We'll be right back on the PODcast. All right. Hey, everybody. Hope everyone over on YouTube and Twitch having themselves a good evening. I hope the Tigers are still winning. I have not been paying attention. They were up 1-0. I saw that. Are they still up 1-0? Top of the 9th. It is 1-0. I do have Nick the Greek's package that he sent us, and it is huge. Pretty heavy.
Oh.
And also from China.
Are we going to open it?
I think we are.
Okay.
Let me get through alerts first, and then we're going to open it.
Is he here?
I don't know. I see that Morgan is here, and I believe there is something in there for Morgan, so he's excited to open it. But I'll read off alerts. We'll give him some time to get here if he's not in here. Have you seen Nick the Greek in chat? I don't get a chance to really look at chat while we're chatting. But let me get through some alerts. Bass Addict probably is how you should say that. Thank you for subscribing over on YouTube. G Money, thank you for
divorce.
Stop it. 13 months, G Money. Thank you for subscribing here on Twitch. Dreskel, 19 months. Liam, 15 months, says, first time in a while I've been able to make it. Really miss this. Hey, well, welcome. Hang out for a little bit. The way things are going, this might turn out to be a 3-segment podcast, even though we were planning on it to be a 2. But we also want to get some people out there to maybe watch the Red Wings, or I didn't even realize that March Madness was back again. For some reason I thought after the first week it was only weekend games, but what do I know?
Not a big college hoops fan.
Can you tell I didn't make a bracket this year? Terra DC, thank you for the 15 months. Thano TV, 22 months is heyo, 22 months. We call that the Dino Cicerelli.
Oh.
I'm old.
No. Yeah, you are.
Spielman, HOF, 22 months as well. Says Lions D could be strong as the offense this season, and that's freaking scary to consider. Let's go. I don't think I'm quite buying in that much yet.
I don't know if there's anything that can happen the rest of this offseason that would convince me that.
Yeah, what?
Like anything realistic that could happen.
Yeah. That's fair. I don't think so either. You reached out to Nick on Twitter. Okay. Thanks, Dan. Downgrade 22 months subscribe to the channel says Florida man, Lions fan, run to the Super Bowl. Florida's a weird place, man. Like, I went to my niece's with a putt-putt place, and what you can also do at this putt-putt place is feed alligators. They're like mini alligators. I forgot what they're called. But like they have a pond full of alligators, mini alligators there. Or you can like, what do you call it? Like prospectors when you like shake sand for gold. You can do that there.
Oh, sifting?
Sifting? Yeah. No, not ducks. They're like little, like alligator looking things that are about this long. We didn't go to Gatorland, but Gatorland does exist.
Panning.
Cayman. Cayman. They're Cayman. Good job. Oh, my brother-in-law's here. Yes, Cayman.
Uh-oh, people are locating you now, Jeremy.
What? You that wasn't in Orlando. That was we were taking a little vacation.
Have you ever eaten alligator?
I feel like I might have, but I don't remember it.
I did my freshman year of college.
Yeah, was it like jerky?
It was very much like,
It wasn't, but it wasn't in jerky form. It wasn't like the righteous felon version.
Oh, I don't really. It was a very strange class. But I feel like I remember it tasting a lot like chicken. I know people say that for a lot of things, but yeah, I don't know. Strange.
Okay. Gator nuggets are okay. Mostly novelty. Gator tail is good. I have had ostrich burgers. I had an ostrich burger in LA when I lived there. Would not recommend. Very gamey. Thomas Hutchins, thank you for the 17 months subscribe to the channel. OJ McCord, 11 months subscribe to the channel, says, I love how Brad Holmes is winning the offseason by not trying to win the offseason.
That's a great way of putting it.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
Like he's not, like I said, like he's not trying to hit these home runs. He's just like, let's buy low.
He's totally content with just getting a guy on base and seeing if he can get him around. You know what I mean?
We're just gonna do this the entire show.
Like I think Brad Holmes would be more of like an on base percentage guy. He's Billy Bean. You know what I mean? Like he's all about on base percentage over batting average.
This might not make people feel good because I know a lot of people hate this, but like if you get a leadoff double, he's definitely bunting to get that guy to third.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
Damian Smith, thank you for the £2 super chat. Says, where do you think Holmes has done less well? That's a good question. Let's be balanced here. I do think, I don't know if I completely buy. Here's the thing, when we had that long discussion about injured players, the one thing he didn't really talk about is that first year off of an injury. Because like it's pretty well documented that it takes some time, not with every player, but a lot of players. That first year, they don't quite feel the same, and so now you have how many guys coming off a major injury that you're planning to rely on? You have Emmanuel Mosley, you have DJ Reader. There are probably more that I can't currently think of, but like
Davenport missed a lot of time last year.
Yeah. And so to me, it's not just a matter of, well, a lot of players get injured. It's okay, but you're taking players coming off major injuries. And that to me is a very valid concern because yes, they might be ready by the time the season goes, but are they going to be themselves? Are they going to be at 100%? And 90%, I don't want to pull. A lot of times, those players are not 100% themselves until sometimes it takes a full year, right, to get right.
Yeah, and I think so. If that is let's look at Brad Holmes' approach and be a little bit critical of it. I think the way that he kind of assuages those concerns, though, is like he has like safeguards in place, right? Like yeah, he got Emmanuel Mosley back, but like Carlton Davis trade, Amik Robertson,
Sure.
like there's like layers of, I guess the best way of putting it is like there's like layers of safety ahead of that player,
Yeah.
right? Like even, but I will, if I'm going to go back and be critical of Brad Holmes, like I think that there's still a lot of reason to be concerned about like just the approach to the defensive line, right? Like I think that there's more examples of things not working out than there are
Yeah.
examples of things working out,
Totally
right?
true.
Like Levi Onwuzurike. You want to, I mean, that's like a like that's like all of the concerns you could ever have about the approach to a player.
Yeah.
Wanted to move up for him. Didn't care that he was hurt. Still drafted him. And it just hasn't worked out, right? Like,
I mean, just think of all the resources they've pumped into that defensive line over the years.
Michael Brockers.
Michael
right?
Brockers. Like,
not even that it was a huge investment, right? But it was like the trade to get him here, the contract to
sure.
to keep him here. And then by the end of his time with Detroit, he was a healthy and active.
Yeah.
I mean, like, not really addressing yes, drafting Broderick Martin, but like Isaiah Buggs was a healthy and active week 1 against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right.
Like you were totally cool with Benito Jones. Like,
oh man, did you see the quote from Dan Campbell on Benito Jones?
No.
It was someone from, this is a common thing that happens during these breakfasts. It's why all of the Lions media was there on Monday when the AFC media or the AFC coaches were available. What you do is you just go to the coaches that coach the players that are new. So you go up to Zach Taylor and you ask him about DJ Reader and what the Lions are getting. And so someone goes up to Dan Campbell and asks about Benito Jones, who, if you may remember, was a Dolphin, became a Lion, and now is a Dolphin again. And Dan Campbell basically said something to like of, yeah, like, thanks for giving us him. We developed him, and now you can have him back.
I love that.
It's great.
That's great. Yeah. That's a cool little wrinkle about the owners' meetings, though.
Yeah. So I headed straight to Antonio Pierce because I know he's already gushed about
Robertson.
Yeah. And he almost like rubber stamped a quote that he had already said about him, which was a little disappointing, but that's how it goes. It's awkward though, because like the way it works is you're sitting at the circular table, and everyone who's sitting at the table with the coach are the local beat. Everyone else is just circling. And so like you have to kind of like disrupt this local beat session that's going on.
Yeah.
Like, shut up for a second. Talk about me.
Talk about the team I'm covering.
Yeah. It's weird. And it's disruptive, but like everyone knows, you're not actually hurting anybody's feelings. They know that's part of the deal. Anyone who's been there before. It's just awkward.
Yeah.
Anyways, I forgot what we were talking about before I interrupted your story.
Reasons to be critical of Brad Holmes.
Oh, right. And you were talking about Benito. Oh, the defensive line. Yeah.
Talking about defensive line.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's go through everything they've done. They've drafted Levi, Aleem, Josh Paschal, Aiden Hutchinson.
Good.
And the
Broderick Martin.
5 guys. All of those in the top 3 rounds, too. Correct?
Yeah. Yep. 2 of them knocked it out of the park.
Yep.
Aiden Hutchinson fell into your lap, so I don't know how much credit I'm going to give you for Aiden Hutchinson.
Sure.
Aleem McNeil, probably his best move in terms of
James
resources.
Houston. Good call, chat. They drafted him.
Damn linebacker.
Okay, fine.
No, I was just trying to win one for the little guys, aka us. No, good call, chat. But in terms of like resources invested and the return on investment, I think Aleem McNeil is probably the best player. A 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
And that's not discrediting Hutch, but like Hutch, there's a lot of expectations that come with being the 2nd overall pick.
Right. True.
But the other draft picks, not so great.
Not so great, but like you also you want to give them time, right? especially after seeing what they did with Iffy and Barnes, you want to see like, all right, well, let's see what Josh Pascal does this year. Let's see what eventually they get in Broderick Martin. It'll be James Houston's third year, kind of second year.
So, but let's talk about free agency though, because I do feel like this free agency is the first time that Brad has been super quote unquote relatively aggressive. In his approach to the defensive line through free agency, right?
100%.
Like, I'm thinking really the only, Charles Harris, right? As far as free agency moves, can you think of anybody else, chat?
Besides like the Benito Joneses and
the Isaiah Buggs, right? Like,
right.
Those are really like, you're filling out the roster. Those are like camp bodies.
But like that was, I feel like that was kind of the opinion of Charles Harris at the time, right? His career was left for dead. John Kaminsky, that was a waiver wire claim.
Wire claim, yeah.
Again, like he's mostly been swinging for doubles at most, if not singles.
And it feels like the approach this free agency feels so contrary to where we've been in off seasons past, right? Like I think a lot of it almost feels like the approach to linebacker last off season, right? Where it's like, okay, we're extending Alex Anzalone, we love him, and then guess what we're doing at pick 18? We're taking Jack Campbell. Like, this free agency is like, okay, you know what? I think they're totally cool with just putting a body next to Aleem McNeil. And maybe that body this year is going to be Broderick Martin because, he's got a year of seasoning. And then it's, oh, no, we're going to get DJ Reader. It's like, oh, okay. Like, I'm totally cool with it. It's awesome. But like, it seems very out of character. And I think we've had these quote unquote out of character moments with Brad Holmes, but we're kind of also learning about, this is Brad Holmes' fourth offseason, right? Like, we're still very much getting to know the guy, but this is so strange and so much of a departure for us as Lions fans, because by season 4 with Bob Quinn, it's like, what are you going to do to pull a rabbit out of your hat, dude?
Nothing.
Like,
Nothing.
What are you, right? Like, what are you going to do to turn things around? We're not waiting for that with Brad Holmes. Like, Brad Holmes has the autonomy to be himself, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no pressure for him to act outside of himself.
Right.
So it feels very much like we're still learning the ebb and flow to Brad Holmes.
Yeah.
Where, we didn't really get that with Bob Quinn, right? It was like, okay, Bob, what are you going to do?
But it's also
to save your job.
It's also a matter of Brad Holmes is evolving because the team is getting better, right? Like with Bob Quinn, it was like, how do I dig myself out of this hole? Right. Oh, like, I'll just keep digging.
How do I keep all these plates in the air?
Right. And he's just continually digging and trying to throw money at problems, and it's not working, and in fact is making things worse and worse and worse. Whereas Brad Holmes is like, all right, I'll dig a little bit of a hole, but I'm mostly gonna, build construction through the draft.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then like maybe the hole works, maybe it doesn't, but I don't know. I'm losing the metaphor a little bit, but
no, we get it. You're a big construction guy.
big manual labor guy. That's me.
Just a guy who loves getting his hands in the dirt.
That's right.
And getting out there and.
I did one summer of landscaping work for a summer camp.
And that was enough for you, right?
And I also did one summer of College Works painting, which, by the way, if you ever need I don't know if I've talked about this on stream before, but if you ever need like your house painted in any sort of way, for the love of God, do not hire any of those college kid company groups. They're scams. We had absolutely zero training. The poor foreman, who is also a college kid of those things, are like way overwhelmed, overworked. I didn't get injured, but I did quit. I was just like, I'm hanging over roofs in very unsafe ways. There's bees everywhere in Detroit, in the Detroit metro area in the summer. We ruined at least one house.
Well, I think, Jeremy, people want the baseball metaphors back. They want us to talk in baseball analogies. Okay. So I think think we've got it down.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Tigers are 1-0, baby.
Chris has got to be happy somewhere.
He sure is. A couple more alerts here. Rise Beast. Thank you for the $5 super chat on YouTube. Says NFL changed the rules just so Madden has to update their game. Yeah. Madden, yeah, that's a really good point. Madden League is going to have to make its first drastic change to gameplay just because of the new kickoff rule.
Oh God, yeah. How pissed off do you think people at EA were like, oh my God, how much code do we have to write now?
Probably pretty pissed.
Like there's undoubtedly going to be like a ton of bugs opening day, right? Like players are gonna like line up opposite. Like you're gonna have the kicking team where the receiving team should be. It's gonna be chaos. I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah,
I talk about the kickoff change.
I do want to. We'll get into it, but the one thing that I do want to. Some people are already talking about ways to like game the system, like how they're gonna try to find loopholes. And I guess the most compelling one, but I think it takes a very skilled kicker to do it, is that like line drive a kick to get a touchback. And so there's two kind of touchbacks now, right?
Yeah, because kick through the end zone, ball's coming out to the 35, right?
It's either 30 or 35. I have to check the rules because the original proposal was 35, but I thought they changed it to 30. But I haven't read like the final proposal. I haven't seen the accepted version.
People are saying 30.
Okay.
Yes. That's still a lot of field position. Like getting the ball at the 30-yard line it's
good.
That's a pretty sweet thing.
I think that's enough incentive for people not to do that.
Agreed.
But if you can line drive it and it lands in I think it's called the landing zone, very, very clever name, which is from the 0 to 20-yard line, and then it rolls through the end zone, that's only a 20-yard touchback. And so, can you get a kicker to do that consistently?
Probably. You're a professional. You know what I mean? By the same token, though, hitting those balls on a line drive, you're getting the ball to the returner potentially quicker as well.
Yeah, true.
And you get that ball in the returner's hands a little bit quicker. Maybe they can find a lane. Yeah,
but if it bounces the wrong way, it bounces out of bounds, and I'm pretty sure bounce out of bounds is still the 40. So,
yeah, that's a good point.
Tactile, I believe the answer to that is no. I don't think you can declare an onside kick and then kick it normal. No, there's no way. Because no. But like this, everyone is lamenting the death of the surprise onside kick, which.
Well, I mean, all of us loved it the one time that it really, really worked for the New Orleans Saints.
Right.
Like, it's okay to wax poetic about those days.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll talk about it more.
Did we not get a surprise onside kick from Dan Campbell in year 1 against the Rams? Am I remembering that correctly?
I think we did. There was so much trickeration in that game. There was
that was the kitchen sink game.
Yeah, there was at least two fake punts. There was 2 fake punts.
Yeah, chat's saying yes. I feel like I remember that correctly.
What a crazy game that was! I'm so glad I decided to go to that game. It was really. I mean, looking back, I'm sure Lions fans were at least a little bit frustrated because the Lions hadn't won a game yet. And it was the first Stafford game and all that. But given the overall low stakes of that season, I think you could have enjoyed that game for what it was at the moment, and you certainly can go back and enjoy what it was.
Yeah, that would be a good game. I don't know. It was a random shower thought the other day, but the wheel that we talked about as like the new redemption reward where like we just like pick a random game and watch the highlights of it.
Yeah.
That'd be a great game to just go back and watch the highlights from. Because it would be like, remember that crazy, insane thing that Dan Campbell decided to do?
Not quite as crazy as the one that we watched. The Lions Saints game from 2015 or whatever it was.
The Lions and the Saints are just destined to have crazy games all the time.
Do we got them this year? I don't remember the schedule at all.
I had them last year.
So probably not. and they didn't win their division. So
almost, they almost did.
They did. Ron of Wireless Zone, 32 months, subscribe to the channel, says, I'd like to take a moment to appreciate the difference in this quote-unquote frosting on the cake draft compared to how can we get the competitive ASAP for as long as I can remember. How can we get competitive ASAP? Got it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Took me a while.
It's a nice change of pace.
Yeah, right? And it feels the right way to approach building. When there's so many unknowns to the draft, just go with the guy you're most confident about.
Mm-hmm.
It seems so simple.
So simple.
Yeah.
You want to get in the second segment here?
Well, that depends if we want to open this bag or do we want to wait and see if we think Nick the Greek is going to show up, or do we want to open it now?
I feel like we wait.
Okay.
Because we could do it at the end of this segment if he shows up.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to do it while he's here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, chat, if you can, try to get a bowl of nacho cheese and just put it outside, right by your computer. That's how you can lure.
That's how you summon him.
To stream. Yeah.
We've said his name 3 times, so that hasn't worked.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, speaking of which, Beetlejuice, this September.
Is it a sequel? Are they rebooting it?
Yeah, it's a sequel. Yeah.
Oh. Interesting.
I'm excited.
Yeah, well, you're a Michael Keaton head. Of course you are.
Of course.
We got to come up with a good name for that. Michael Keaton fans.
We do. I'll workshop some things.
Okay. Four Lions Forest. Thank you for the 41 months subscribe to the channel. Just says, let's go. Let's go. I think that's him telling us, let's go to the second segment. Birdmen. It's not bad.
Oh. All right.
All right. We'll get into the second segment. Here we go. And we are back here on the POD cast talking owners meetings. Josh Reynolds we'll get to in a little bit, but I do want to stick with the owners meetings because one thing that was striking to me was how the Lions talked about Carlton Davis and how much of an impact he's going to have on just their defensive approach. And I wrote about it today, Ryan, because I thought Dan Campbell said something that can't be overlooked. And it's talking about man coverage and how much they value that. And it shouldn't come as much of a surprise because we've seen that that's kind of what Aaron Glenn has wanted to do, but that has also shifted a lot through the 3 years as their personnel has shifted. Even a guy like Cam Sutton, and we talked about it a little bit this offseason, how we weren't sure if he was going to fit necessarily with where we thought the Lions were trending, which is a more man coverage defense, it looks like, because Cam Sutton is a little bit more of a zone guy. But Dan Campbell basically erased any sort of doubt, any sort of ambiguity. He comes out and says man coverage is, quote, one of our core values to be a good team. He likened it to stopping the run and running the ball. It's that fundamental to what they want to do. And Carlton Davis is a tremendous piece to that because he was their number one corner in Tampa. And anyone you talk to, all the people that I've talked to that cover Tampa are like, yeah, he was really good in man coverage. He's really good in press coverage. The Buccaneers started moving and doing a little bit more zone, and that's why maybe some of the stats on his, PFF page or whatever don't look as good, because when he was just lined up and saying, hey, take away this side of the field, hey, take away this player, that's what he did. That's what he was really, really good at. And so I know some people were a little underwhelmed about Carlton Davis because they had talked themselves into L'Jarius Sneed or, Marcus Davenport, or not Marcus Davenport. I keep doing that. The other one, what?
Amik Robertson.
No. The other Saints corner that they could have traded for.
Oh, Lattimore.
Marcus Lattimore. Yes, not Davenport.
Got there.
Yeah. They talk themselves into these big names that they know, and then they don't know Carlton Davis. They look at their PFF grade and blah, 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 blah. Carlton Davis is a tremendous fit for where they want to go. And I believe not only that he is going to be their number one corner, I would not be surprised to see them still sign him to an extension this offseason. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I revealed on Pride Detroit Direct, and I'll talk a little bit about it here. They obviously restructured his contract, right? He had that $14 million cap hit. They restructured it. They took, what was it, $8 million of his salary, turned it into a signing bonus, saved $4.5 million this season. Turns out, no, they didn't. They did a lot more than that. They applied this 50% rule that they've been using a lot over these past 2 years, which essentially just takes money this year and kicks it down the road. I think he has 3 void years, maybe 4 void years. Now his cap hit this year is all the way down to like $4 million. But that leaves $10 million in the future. And to me, if you are leaving $10 million in the future and all of that would hit next year if they don't re-sign him, that tells me you plan on re-signing him. You plan on keeping those prorated cap hits in those future years that are not going to be voided. And listen, I'm sure they want to see him a little bit. They want to let him settle down. He even said, like, I kind of want to feel myself out in his introductory press conference before I jump into contract extension talks. And so I think I think people are underestimating that signing, that trade. I think he is going to be an essential part to what they want to do, and I think they view him as a long-term piece.
I do too. And I think you said it right there, Jeremy. Like, I don't think Brad Holmes is in the business of kicking the can down the road like that. Like,
They didn't have to, right? There's no reason. They're not in that bad of a cap situation this year where they need to kick, 2/3 of an entire contract into next year.
Right. Like, there are no huge pressing needs, right? Like, some of the other things that we heard at the owners' meetings, on Ross St. Brown is something that's kind of ongoing. And, there's the Jared Goff contract extension that's kind of out there, but like, they can be patient with Penei Sewell. Like, I know a lot of us were like, all right, well, like, it's the off season. Like, let's make sure that they have time. They have time, right? Like, there's no pressing need for them to, make as much cap space as they have to, because they're not the New Orleans Saints, right? Like, they're not constantly, juggling, their salary cap. I do think that there is some underestimating with Carlton Davis. I think the one concern or the reservation that people have with him that is a legitimate one is, again, something that is pretty consistent with Brad Holmes' approach to free agency and the offseason in general, is the injuries, right? Like, the greatest ability, Jeremy, is
something
availability, right? Like, and I think that's where I can understand the concern. I think the upside, though, right, it all lies in him being more at home in this man coverage that seems so foundational to Detroit, and they just haven't had the horses to do it, right? And that's been the biggest concern. And I think they have somebody now. Like, you look at last year's numbers from PFF when it comes to man coverage. Cam Sutton was 41st among cornerbacks in man coverage percentage at 30.2%. Carlton Davis was all the way down in the 80s at 83rd, 22% of his snaps in man coverage. I'm seeing like some trade-off in terms of, you get a guy where he's most comfortable, and a lot of things are going to benefit from that, right? Like, the player is going to benefit from it. The defense at large is going to benefit from it. It's a move that I think people are going to warm up to once they see the guy on the field.
Yeah. And listen, if you loved all the aggressiveness that the Lions showed down the stretch that caused a lot more pressures, a lot more sacks, interceptions, the Lions are going to feel a lot more comfortable doing that if they can trust their outside corners to cover on an island. And they've more or less said that they trust Carlton Davis to take away an entire side of the field. Like, that is almost verbatim what Dan Campbell was saying.
And I mean, take it back to Carlton Davis's, introductory press conference. Like, this guy has the swagger and the confidence of a number one cornerback, right? Yep. Like, that's one of the prereqs for filling that role. And being that player is believing that you are that guy. And I think they do have that guy, right? As long as he can stay on the field and be healthy. And if he can be on the field and he can be healthy, then again, it changes the dynamic of this defense a ton.
Yeah. And listen, Dan Campbell knows this guy, right? They played him twice last year. He specifically said part of the game plan was to not throw at him. And he was in the NFC South while Dan Campbell was there for several years. So this isn't, just throwing darts and hoping this guy turns out to be the guy that they think he is. They've got a pretty good scouting report on this guy. And so I'm willing to trust them given their scouting reports on players so far. Speaking of good scouting reports, Brian Branch, we got to talk about him a lot with Dan Campbell, who essentially broke the news, I guess, that some people were thinking. He was basically asked straight up, listen, you guys haven't done anything in safety. Can we interpret that as Brian Branch is going to play a little bit of safety? And he, Dan Campbell's like, no, we're still in the safety market. We're still looking at our options there, but more or less, yes. Like, that is the trajectory that we expect Brian Branch to go on. And again, not necessarily a super big surprise. The Lions tried that out a little bit last year. They thought maybe putting that on his plate was something that he was capable in his rookie season. And then they just said, you know what? Screw it. You're playing your ass off at nickel. Stay at nickel. And we don't want to overburden you on your rookie season. There's enough flying through any rookie's heads that we don't need to throw 3 different positions at you. But he more or less said he is on the C.J. Gardner-Johnson route where you play nickel earlier in your career, you start to ease in a little bit of safety, and then you're just going to be this versatile piece where I think you may have said it in our Slack room, Ryan, like you are just building this guy so that he is never coming off the field no matter what you're playing.
Yeah, I mean, you want Brian Branch on the field
100% of the time,
no matter what, right? And I think part of it too, right, is you get Brian Branch in a position playing nickel cornerback where he's closer to the line of scrimmage, and he has the ability to flash the pass rush potential, the ability to defend the run, things that he's really good at, right? And that's something that even, to take it back to Carlton Davis, Dan Campbell talked about, right? Like, he'll tackle on the perimeter, right?
Yep.
Brian Branch is a guy who's going to tackle along the perimeter. So it makes sense to put him in that spot. Now, the other thing to consider, right, is that nickel defense is pretty much the base defense for the modern NFL. So you want to put Brian in a spot where he's going to be on the field as much as he can be. So having him in that spot, you had the luxury last season of, thinking, okay, maybe Tracy can bounce back. You have Kirby, you have CJ Gardner-Johnson. You have a lot of moving pieces at safety. Brian needs to be on the field. So we're going to put him in nickel corner because discussion over, right? We don't have to worry about him being part of this rotating cast. He's a great player and we want to see him out on the field. For the people I think who have reservations about, well, he was so good there, why would you want to move him, right? It's kind of like the Penei Sewell quandary, right? Where it's like, oh, he's so great at right tackle. Why would you want to move him to left tackle? Or why would you want him to move from left to right? Brian Branch played the star position at Alabama for a couple of seasons.
Yeah.
A role that he took from Minkah Fitzpatrick,
right,
that Nick Saban trusted to Minkah Fitzpatrick. He trusted Brian Branch to play that role. There is no reason anybody should ever question Brian Branch's instincts when it comes to playing football.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, I think. You have him playing nickel cornerback in his rookie season for all of the reasons I already listed, but also because I think that there's less to process there than it is at safety.
100%.
Right? I think that there's so
100%.
many more tasks and responsibilities that you're putting on a rookie's plate rather than see ball, get ball, and the quick intermediate stuff that a lot of slot guys are running, right?
Yep.
That makes more sense to put Branch there in that spot than it is to task him with all those responsibilities. Like, let him grow and let him ease into things. And like you said, Jeremy, in your article, right? Like, there was that time where the Lions were like trying to put like more on his plate. And then it was like, screw it. Like, just be comfortable at nickel cornerback.
Yep. Let's
not overload you in your rookie season. I'm sure without a shadow of a doubt, I'm sure that if you ask Brian Branch this training camp, you can be like, hey, how much has the game slowed down for you and how much has that benefited you? And I'm sure he's going to be like, dude, like I'm sure. Yeah. Night and day. Right. So I think that's where you should, that should ease your concerns about Brian Branch playing safety is like from year 1 to year 2, there's probably a lot that guy has learned and he still has a lot to learn, but I think that the Lions could be a little bit more secure, or they could be a little bit more confident in their choosing to move him away from that spot because of his development.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think they are just like, okay, you're a safety now. I think it's more, okay, we can put you at safety now.
We can put that on your plate. Yeah.
Yes, you are a nickel, but you can also play a little bit of safety when we want to have either three safeties out there, or maybe we're not nickel and maybe we take Iffy off the field. You know, it's whatever they want with him. And you ask any safety in this league, Iffy and Kirby have both said this. I think it's just like, when you are back there at safety, you have to know the defense front to back. You have to know why the defensive ends are doing what they're doing. You have to know why the linebackers and corners are doing what they're doing. And so when you're in
passing coverage and all that stuff, like
yes, when you're in your first year of learning a defense, that is a lot to learn. There's a reason why Kirby Joseph wasn't supposed to start in his rookie season. And so now that you have a better understanding of the defense, you can do all those things. I mean, it's not going to be easy in year two, but Brian Branch, like you said, smart dude. They entrusted him with a lot early on his plate at Alabama, and so I think he's gonna. Well, you know, Dan Campbell said, like, we're gonna take it only as fast as he shows us he can handle, but my guess is it's not going to take too long to see that guy start getting serious snaps at safety.
Yeah, and last thing, I think that combined with Carlton Davis, I think you get a lot of interesting coverages, and you get a lot of interesting looks that you can throw at an offense where it's like,
you're being unpredictable.
What role is Brian playing?
Yeah.
Right. Like, is he going to move up in the box? Is he going to, drop back? And with Carlton too, like you get a guy who can play more like I think you get a lot more interesting chess pieces that make things more difficult on the offense just from a schematic standpoint.
Yep. No question. All right, let's move on. Let's talk a little Josh Reynolds. Even though it seemed like the Lions were almost making a public plea to say, please come back, Josh. That doesn't happen. And in fact, in 24 hours after Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell both say that they publicly want him back, he signs with the Denver Broncos on a 2-year deal. We don't know the structure of that deal. We only know that its max value is $12 million. Is that right? Or is it 14?
14 million?
14 million. Okay. It's hard for me to have a reaction to this without knowing the actual deal, because I'm going to tell you right away, he's not getting $7 million a year. That's not what this contract is actually going to look like. But he is getting a significant raise, because if you don't remember, 2 years ago, the Lions signed him to a 2-year, $6 million contract. So this is a potential doubling of that, maybe even a little bit more of that. So good for Josh Reynolds. I don't think the Lions were probably ever close to committing that much money to him. That would surprise me if they were willing to give him, I mean, maybe like a 1-year, $6 million deal where they kick some of that into 2025, but 2 years, $12 million, $14 million, whatever it turns out to be, seemed like more than the Lions were willing to pay for a guy who might have some of his playing time, probably will have some of his playing time eaten up by Jameson Williams. So I don't want to downplay Josh Reynolds' importance to the team. Like, I think he was a very important player. I think he made big plays in big moments, and we know that the coaching staff absolutely adored the guy, right? And it's not just in terms of his on-field production in terms of catches and all that, but it's his ability to play the X and the Y. It's his ability to play the Z. It's his ability to block downfield and his work ethic and all that sort of like culture setting stuff. But again, I think this is another example of the Lions doing exactly what I wanted them to do, and maybe early on in this regime I was afraid about, which is loving these culture guys a little bit too much that they're not willing to move on from them, or they're willing to overpay for mediocre players. Like this, like Jamal Williams last year, it's just we can only afford so much of you guys. We eventually need top tier guys if we're going to take the next step beyond just a playoff team, beyond just winning the division, really pushing for a title. You need to be able to let go of guys like Josh Reynolds, even if they're doing everything right for your team.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. I think now you have 2 off seasons in a row, right, where you have integral pieces of your offense. Jamal Williams was a huge part of the offense in 2022. Josh Reynolds was a very big piece to this offense getting off to the incredible start that it did, because he was a first down machine.
Yeah.
I think if the NFC Championship game doesn't go down the way that it does. Because I think that there were a lot of people that were happy to see Josh Reynolds go. If that game happens differently, if there are two plays that happen differently for Josh Reynolds, there's a much different tune.
Yeah.
I mean, we also might be talking about the Super Bowl champion Detroit Lions if those two plays don't happen as well, right? Like,
okay. Whew.
I know. Yeah. But I do agree that there is room for growth with both of those moves, right? Like Jamal was great, but it goes back to Ben Johnson's comments about like we're leaving some meat on the bone when it comes to some runs.
Yeah.
Jamison Williams, now's your time.
Yeah.
Like I think what moving on from Josh Reynolds really truly indicates is like a lot of trust and a lot of faith in Jamison Williams. I'm not saying that J-Mo's all of a sudden going to be a guy who's going to get 100 targets. I don't know if there's that kind of room in this offense, with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. I mean, those three guys right there might get more targets
right.
than Jamison Williams. And that's totally well and fine. But I think that this is a huge vote of confidence in Jamison Williams as being a guy who they expect to take the next step. Again, there's a couple of other pieces, though, right, Jeremy? There's Donovan Peoples-Jones that the Lions re-signed. There's Antoine Green at the end of the roster. There's some other guys like Maurice Alexander, and there's the Tom Kennedys of the world where it's like, okay, like, I mean, there's some experience being on an NFL roster there. But there is no more safety net for Jamison Williams.
Correct. Yeah.
That's gone.
They're throwing him into the deep end at this point and saying, hey, man, it's year 3. The injuries way in the past. We're forgetting about the gambling stuff. Go be a first-round pick for us. And they've been talking him up this offseason a little bit. And you're right. I think this is a little bit of a vote of confidence. Otherwise, they would maybe invest a little bit more into Josh Reynolds. But I also want to, let's point out the statistical, hole that they now have in their roster. Like, they now need... He had 608 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. Let's combine that with Jamison Williams' production, 352 for 2 touchdowns. So about just under 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. Do you think you can get that production from Jamison Williams and Donovan Peoples-Jones? A collective 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns.
You would hope so.
That seems extremely reasonable, right?
It does, yeah.
And so, okay, like that. And I only point this out because I feel like there's just a little bit of wide receiver hysteria happening right now. And in that, this is now a major need. I don't think it is. I'm not saying they won't draft one early. A lot of people seem to really like the wide receivers in this draft. There might be a really good one available at 29. Maybe at I keep for 61. Is that right?
Maybe.
And
who knows
listen,
when it comes to Brad Holmes? There might be a lot of moving. Hey, people are putting Neighbors ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr.
Who knows?
Brad Holmes wants to move up for. I mean, hey.
It certainly seems like the way college football is headed, and the way offenses are run there, that there is an easier transition from college ball to pro ball, and there is a wealth of talent, almost seemingly every draft. So maybe it's good, business, as Brad Holmes likes to say, to draft one every year. I'm not putting it beyond that, but to me, there is not like this gaping hole in the roster right now that the Lions have to go out and they have to draft one on day 1 or day 2. We already know that the Lions aren't going to do that. They aren't going to approach the draft like that. But to me, I think they have enough productive players on offense where I don't think there should be a reason to expect the offense to take a significant step back just because Josh Reynolds isn't here.
No, I totally agree with that. I think I totally agree with what you're saying in the sense of it isn't, oh my gosh, we need to figure out what we're doing at wide receiver 3. Like, we need a plan, right? I do think that you look at the contracts and you look at the landscape of the room, and I know we're all waiting on an Amon-Ra St. Brown extension, but it's like right now the guys who are signed past 2024 are Jamison Williams, Khalif Raymond, and Antoine Green. And it's like, okay, well, like,
you're gonna need more there.
we're gonna need more there. But I think we talked about this in one of our Q&As that we did with Eric, like on the weekend. Just talking about how do you fill that Josh Reynolds role, right? Like it doesn't seem to make sense for another veteran guy to come in in the sense that, well, you want Jameson Williams to get a lot of run. And what veteran guy is going to come in here of Josh Reynolds caliber who's like, well, where are my targets? Like,
Right.
how am I going to get my next contract? Right. So it almost seems like there is going to be a draft pick that happens because, like you said, maybe it is good business to draft a wide receiver in every draft, which is something that Brad Holmes has done.
Yeah.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Antoine Green.
There you
Like,
go.
I think that he's just going to draft a wide receiver at some point during the draft, whether that's at 29 or it's on day 3. It doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
I'm cool with whatever approach you take.
You have broken the hearts of people that want DJ Shark back.
I would love DJ Shark back too.
I would too, honestly. Like it's kind of that perfect. It's almost like the Marvin Jones move of last year, and I know that didn't work out, but it's like bring in a veteran guy who knows the system, has a little bit of familiarity, comfort in Detroit, and I mean he's going to come at a low price. It's it's like the reverse Benito Jones, where it's like you make sure he gets paid after leaving Detroit. He goes somewhere else, it doesn't work out, and then you bring him back and buy low again. You buy low twice on DJ Chark, although you could argue that the first time around, what was it? It was like a 1 year, $10 million deal. Maybe it's a buy high.
Yeah. And I guess also now I'm thinking about the NFC Championship game as Josh Reynolds star faded, who had maybe their best professional game. Jameson Williams, right?
It's true. 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
People forget about that second touchdown, probably because it didn't, like they were already like so disheartened. And why are we talking about that?
Yeah, maybe because Dan Campbell ran the ball a couple plays before that.
Maybe that. All right, before we get
talking about that game, let's go.
No. Although I did find Dan Campbell's answer about watching that game with the team interesting, but we'll talk about that another time. Let's close out here talking about some of the new rules. Mainly, I think we want to highlight the 2 big ones, which we'll talk quickly here about the hip drop tackle, but I think we're both a little bit more excited about the new kickoff. So I don't know. The internet was in a tizzy over the hip drop tackle. Do you have any like hot takes about that? Do you think people are overreacting a little bit? Do you think they're trying to coach defense out of the game?
Man, it was very takey over the weekend, was it not? Like,
It sure was.
I feel like everybody had a take about this, and I don't have much of a take other than I'm not thrilled with the idea of more officiating.
Yeah.
I think that's really my only takeaway. And I do see people kind of comparing it to horse collar tackles, and I think that just different. Like, those are different. Like, 2 different things, right?
Sure. Yeah, listen, I in terms of like a new rule, I can see why it's the same. Like it's a very high injury rate play, and you want it out of the league, and you're taking a tool out of the defender's tool belt, which might feel unfair to them. But on the officiating part, like it's cut and dry. There's not a lot of questions with horse collars. Those are pretty easy to see. The only time you ever really get it messed up is if someone's getting pulled on the hair instead.
Right. And announcers love bringing up that hair as part of the jersey.
They sure do.
You can't take that away from TV announcers. They love that.
Yeah. And I'm with you. The officiating is absolutely a major concern with this new rule. I think the league views it as we don't care. And in a good way. In it, I know we all like to say the NFL doesn't care about player health. They're playing games on Wednesdays, and all that is true. I think when the league is given the option of player health or more money, they're always going to take more money. But that, to me, that doesn't mean that they're completely ignoring player health. I think this is a player health. Like, I think they are being legitimate when they say, listen, this play results in injury 20 to 30 times more than any other tackle. Let's get it out of the game. And if that means more mistakes from officials, so be it. We're fine with that. And the example they kept using was the full body weight thing. That's something that has changed player behavior drastically over the 3 years. But we all hate how it's being officiated, right? It's terrible. They're getting it wrong all the time. It's frustrating. It sucks. I don't think they care that much. Like, obviously they don't want bad officiating, but if it means that players are going to be safer, I think they're willing to take that chance. And so that's kind of my take on, like, I'm with defenders that are pissed off. I understand they are making the game harder for defense, and I'm not saying they're intentionally doing that to raise scoring. But at the same press conference, they're like, scoring's down 1.5 points. We're kind of concerned about that. I'm like, what? Okay. And there's like, that's why we made the kickoff rule. We think that's going to bring off more scoring. I'm just like, okay. You're not doing yourselves any favors to defensive players who are like, stop trying to make defense illegal.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you, lock and step, in terms of why do we need to make it harder for defenders again in this league? But
right.
Again, right to that point, right? Like, oh, well, maybe one of the unintended consequences is that we just get more scoring. Like,
right. Yeah. That had to be like at least some of their thinking.
Yeah, I have to feel like they sat down at a table and they're like, okay, scoring's down. Like, what are some things that we can just do to, inflate
it's
that?
Down 1.5 points. Relax.
No, I get it. Right. I get it.
I know you do.
Yeah.
But if I was in that meeting, I'd be like, this is not a problem.
Yeah,
what are you talking about? All right, but let's talk about the new kickoff. We're not going to go through everything that's new about the kickoff. Go watch an XFL kickoff, and it's basically that with a couple more tweaks to it. My first take from it is that first of all, like, I know I'm Mr. I hate special teams. I think this is awesome. I didn't think the league was ever going to do something like this because it's a drastic change and there are a bunch of scaredy cats. But I love that the Lions fully embraced it from the get-go. Like, at the beginning of the week, Rod Wood was like, we're in favor of this. We want this to pass. When we talked to Dan Campbell minutes before it passed, he's just like, oh yeah, we've been grinding some XFL tape. We're all about, like, we're ready. Me and Phipp have got plans. And the way he put it was actually very smart, and I just like the way he said it, is like, we got all these scaredy cats in the league that don't want this passed because they're scared. They don't know what's on the other side. We're embracing it. We know that with a play this new and this innovative, what's going to push teams over the top is coaching. And we believe in our coaches. I love that.
It's a great place to be.
Yeah. I love that.
I love it. I'm right there with you. I love it. To go back to talking about the hip drop tackle, this was viewed as one of the most dangerous plays in football, right? Like,
yeah.
Two things about the kickoff. One, completely ceremonial because most of them just went through the back of the end zone. And the other one was the plays that didn't go through the back of the end zone are extremely dangerous because you had these players 220, 30, 40 pounds running full speed. They're not playing on defense. They're trying to make another contract for themselves. Like, it is a very, like, car crash play.
You lost James Houston for the season because of it.
Yeah. And how many players, right?
Yeah.
And it looks funny. It looks weird. I will say, like, the thing that made me smile right when you said, like, oh, like they're trying to, ruin. My dad immediately, when he was like, what's the deal with this new kickoff? They're ruining the game. What happened to the game I loved? And I showed it to him and he was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. And I'm like, oh, right. Like, I get like your snap reaction of like, oh man, no, like, here's my big takeaway. I want Jameson Williams back there.
I don't know what the strategy is with your returner, because I saw someone on Twitter suggest that you actually don't want the speed guy. You want the good vision guy because you don't have that much room. Before, you had all this room to accelerate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now you have, I don't know, 10. It depends where the kickoff lands, obviously, but like they're trying to land it in that 0 to 20 zone. You have everyone in between the 30 and 35 yard line, so you're only going to get about 10 yards of ramp up speed. And yes, if you can get someone to go, 0 to 100 in that 10 yards, great. But I think there needs to be a little bit more finesse to the returner's game than maybe a full speed guy.
Yeah, but hey, I would say that Jameson Williams, A, loves special teams.
He does.
B, slippery dude.
Yeah.
And then also, like, I think it's way different than punt returns, right? Like,
yeah,
you can't just throw anybody out there to return punts.
Right.
Khalif Raymond is my safe spot. Like, I love Khalif Raymond returning punts. Anything beyond Khalif Raymond, I'm like, Donovan Peoples-Jones, your controller disconnected. What's going on? The kickoff thing's going to be weird though, right? Like, and I think that's what Dan and he was speaking to is like this idea of like, it's new, it's different. Like, of course that's going to scare the shit out of everybody.
Right.
Right. Like the unknown is the scariest part of this, but in the unknown, they trust their coaching.
Yeah.
And I guess the thing I'm thinking is like Jameson Williams is probably one of your top 3, maybe 4 important skill position players on your team. If we are making this play safer, well, is it okay to put Jameson back there? Because that was one of the great concerns about putting a guy back on kickoff is like, okay, you're running the risk of injuring this guy.
Yeah.
Now that injury concern is tilted in your favor a little bit more, do you want to put a nice skill position player back there to make that play for you?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
That's and I mean, there's so many other questions too. Do you want linebacker types out there blocking? Do you want speed guy? You probably don't need as much speed out there.
Yeah, you want some bigger, bulkier guys.
It to me, what's going to be fascinating is to see how different each team approaches it.
Colby Sorsdal on kick returns.
Aleem, for the love of God, just put the ball in Aleem's hand once before I die. I'm going to hammer that forever. The guy was a running back. Let him be a running back at least once.
You know what? He was also a hell of a baseball player at NC State. I want to bring this podcast full circle.
Baseball season, let's go. All right. Well, the 9th inning just ended. We're not headed to extra innings. That'll do it for us. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. We will be back maybe with some extra stuff before this week is through. We'll definitely be back for a main POD cast to kind of put a button on free agency. And listen, the draft is less than a month away at this point. We got to start talking about it. So we'll start doing that here on the podcast feed. But for now, for Ryan, I'm Jeremy. Thank you all for listening. It's chaos. Be kind.
Recording stopped.
All right. We are back with our, off-air version.
Off-air plus, somebody's here.
That is what I saw. We are, if you don't know over on YouTube, because I know if you only watch us on YouTube, this probably hasn't happened ever during YouTube. We do own a P.O. box. I don't think the command works over on YouTube, but if it does, if you hit ! P.O. box or ! Mailbag, you can send us stuff. I don't know why you would want to. Sometimes you send me stuff that, I'll be honest, goes in the trash. I'm not gonna wear shirts about diarrhea and boners. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to.
It's not you.
It's not me. I don't know what to do with a yodeling pickle. But if
you don't know what to do with a yodeling pickle,
no, I sure don't.
Let it yodel, baby.
But if you ever have an idea to send us stuff, you can. Just like our good friend, who I'm pretty sure is still here, Nick the Greek. I think I've already been told what this is, so I'm not going to spoil it. Do you know? Did I tell you?
You did not tell me. I'm wondering is it a bag of nacho cheese?
It's definitely not.
Okay.
I know there are multiple things in here for multiple people. And hopefully, are you still here, Morgan? I don't know if Morgan's here because I think he got it tipped off that one of the things is for him.
Chad is asking if it's ticking.
It's not ticking. And I'm pretty sure it's not powder.
Okay, good.
Have we reached a point in culture where some people don't even understand that reference at this point?
Oh, man.
That was a time.
That was a time. Anthrax was a time.
I don't see Morgan here, but we're gonna do this. We just got to do this at this point. Nick the Greek is definitely here. All right, here we go.
That's quite the size of package for just edibles for Morgan.
There are multiple jerseys here.
All from China.
All from China. Let's just open them up one at a time. We've got a number 1 here.
Uh-oh.
Let's see what's on the back. Can you guess who this is for? Oh, it's going to be back. Oh, it's not going to be backwards.
Ah, nice. Oh yeah.
I'm a little offended that he's number 1, but I'll swallow my pride.
It's better that it's not Cam Sutton. That's for sure.
Jamo's going to get number 1 now, right?
Oh yeah, because he wanted it bad.
He wanted it real bad.
I mean, we didn't even talk about it. I mean, not that there's much to talk about at all, but jerseys, April 18th.
Oh yeah, we were supposed to talk about that, but you're right. There's not really a ton to talk about. We'll save that. That sounds like a main PODcast kind of topic of like what we want to see type of thing.
Yeah.
All right, I'm getting a feeling this one might be mine.
Marvin Jones. Does it say wet blanket?
It sure does. Amazing.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We have a 20. I get this might be for Morgan because it might be missing a number. Or
I was gonna say, is the name gonna be 4?
It's an all gray, and I appreciate that I did not get an all gray.
Mm.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah.
Nailed it. Hopefully, Morgan, are you here? I haven't seen him back. Oh well, if he's not. And of course, we couldn't go an entire jersey reveal without this number.
This is 100% going to be Furfet.
I'm sorry. You should have seen this one coming.
Oh, Bovada King, yes! Oh yeah, that's great. I love the Chinese quality of the blue being completely wrong.
Yeah. And they don't have a blue outline on these uniforms, do they? The numbers?
I can't. Not that we need to know anymore, because by April 18th, it's not going to matter. But
True.
that blue is
like,
so.
It's
North
like a
Carolina.
baby blue. Yeah, it is very much like a baby blue.
Go Chargers!
Well, now I have 2 articles of clothing for you, Ryan, that I'll at some point give to you, but probably will forget next time I see you.
Bovada King 69. Man, what a throwback! Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. That was very entertaining and very much appreciated.
As the official seal, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Look at that. That doesn't look fake at all. That doesn't look like Fanatics bad sewing job or anything.
I think that's...
These aren't see-through, right, Nick? Good stuff. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
All right. Anything else that we should talk about? I do. So I saw some people.
Liam. What comment?
What did you say? Oh, Jesus. I wanted to show you guys the oh God, brain starting shutdown. Carlton Davis contract. Because I feel like
easier to understand it when you see it.
That not only that, but like this looked different a week ago. They had it wrong. They had it different. And so if you saw it before, you're like, Jeremy, you just lied to us. I've seen the contract. It doesn't look like that. It looks different now. And as always, trust over the cap over everything else. I shared it for you, Ryan, so you can see it too.
Yes, thank you.
Is the desktop for no? Hold on. The desktop button is not working. So this is probably going to look super strange to you, as it should, when you have a base salary of $8 million and a cap number of $4.5 million. That's not how that works. That's not how normal contracts work. If you have an $8 million base salary, all that $8 million is going to be reflected in your cap. But because they're using this 50% rule thing, basically they're treating this like a veteran minimum base salary, and the remaining of that gets treated like a signing bonus.
Okay.
So the difference between this and the vet minimum salary is prorated throughout this. So again, in a $14.5 million contract, $4.5 million is hitting now, almost $10 million is hitting next year. They didn't have to do this. They are not in such like a tight salary cap situation that they need $10 million this down the line. They need to kick it down the line.
Yeah. Well, this
is
interesting.
So I look at this, I look all these void years and a relatively reasonable prorated signing bonus, and I say, they're just going to fill in these. They're just going to give this dude an extension and throw in some base salaries, and this is going to look like a very normal contract after they do that.
I mean, like, would it, and it wouldn't even shock me or you or anybody if, like, that is the duration of the contract, right? Like, through 2027.
Listen, they'll add a signing bonus, right? Like, if he signs a new contract, there's going to be an added signing bonus, and that'll add to these numbers.
And there might be some more void years because Brad Holmes loves void years.
Maybe. I hope not. To me, it doesn't need it. But like, in case you don't get it, because I understand like contract stuff, this number, if they extend him for 3 years, this number
can be spread out. Yeah.
Yes. Because this number reflects these three numbers
all added up. Yep.
They'll stay in these respective boxes if they extend him 3 years, so that this prorated signing bonus will be $3.2 million instead of $9.8.
Yep. And then you'll have whatever base salary that's added for the contract thrown into that cap number too.
Right. Plus probably another signing bonus that gets, again, prorated throughout this. So I think they might do it as soon as this year. I really do.
Why not? Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can wait if you wanted. So this contract voids in February. So well before free agency. So you'd want to get a deal done before that. You could do it, during your Super Bowl parade, but that doesn't leave you a lot of time.
Yeah. Well, and I think that I don't know. Don't you feel like the draft might be? I mean, obviously it's part of the equation, but the idea that maybe they want to see how Carlton plays this year.
Yeah.
If they get a guy at 29 that they feel like, oh, that player could be ready after a year.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then maybe you play it that way. But I do think I agree with you in the sense that they might view Carlton as a guy that they're going to give an extension to. And if they do it, I would venture to guess that they would do it this summer.
It'd come cheaper if you're thinking about that, right? Like, it's that whole get a deal done early now before he explodes and really proves that he's a number one dude.
Yeah, but before we give you more than 22% snap share playing man coverage, we're going to give you a contract now.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, if the low risk move is to wait.
The contracts, they're interesting.
They are. They're and they are only getting more complicated. Like, I know some people even think like a simple restructure is complicated, and I understand why you would think that way. Like, it's not football, right? It's math, and a lot of people just like are not fluent in math, and I get it.
I mean, and then there's the difference between the restructure and the renegotiation,
right?
And
we're taking a pay cut.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
But like when you start getting into the 50% rule, which is what that reflected, you might find like 0.5% of people who cover the sport who understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like to chase, like, I love to go down those rabbit holes. To me, that's fun and interesting, and I know Eric loves to do it too. So we try to stay on top of it as much as we can. But the CBA is a dull read. I will give you that.
Yeah. And the same token though, there's also like Spielberger has the market kind of cornered, and so does Jason
Fitzgerald. Yep,
from OTC. Like, I mean, those are like, whenever there's like a contract thing I'm thinking of, it's like, and I'm not like going to like search or ask you guys. It's like, okay, like those are probably the two places I'm going to look before I go anywhere else. And if those two people don't have the answer, then I don't think anybody has the answer.
Right. Just the salary cap managers do. Shout out to I think it's is it Joel Corey? He's a former NFL agent, I think, who like writes for. Yeah, Joel Corey, JoelCorry. I think he writes for CBS, but also kind of deals like that. Those three, I think, are the pillars of media covering the salary cap.
Because it doesn't, like, I will say that as far as salary caps go, like, I knew way more about the NBA salary cap than any high schooler should know from playing NBA 2K. Like 2K had like legit, like, these are what bird rights are, and like as far as like the salary coming in and the salary coming out, like there's a certain percentage that can be different, and like it was awesome to like learn, like that's how I learned the NBA salary cap, and like I had an understanding of it that like people did not.
Yep.
I wish that like there were tools like that, like Madden should be way more like, you should get like in the weeds when it comes to like,
you could add void years.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's how kids are going to learn things.
True. Like everyone is always so stressed out about, kicking the can down the road. Go experience it. Add your void years, backload contracts, cut people early, see what happens.
Yeah, do all that stuff, and like you're going to do it, and you're not going to have autosave on because you're going to turn your game off and you realize that you screwed your franchise. So you can go back to your old save point.
Restore the Roar, we haven't really looked at the available salary cap remaining. I don't know. I tend not to focus too much on that because I really do think you can make certain things work if you want them to. The one thing I talked about regarding the Cam Sutton financial situation, because I think some people might be stressed out by the fact that because it's a June 1 cut means that you carry his entire contract until June. Like, oh, well, God, there's, 10 million in whatever. You can earmark money, though, that you intended on saving for the draft and just save that for later.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to sign your draft picks right away. You can sign your draft picks in July, in August, when you do have that money available.
Right. And also, speaking of people that are go-tos, if you're wondering about how much salary cap room the Lions have, just go look at Justin Rogers' Twitter. He's always on top of that.
Yeah, and I was actually going to mention Justin too because you mentioned NBA salary cap. That's where he kind of learned
the ins and outs of
it. And it's way different, obviously, in the NFL, but like he learned the importance of that and learned like what you need to look for and going down the rabbit hole there. And so he and I were actually talking about the adjustment that was made to Carlton Davis's contract and going through it because he knows that I'm interested in that sort of stuff. Whereas I think, I don't want to speak for everyone on the beat, but I think a lot of people on the beat are just like, the numbers are what they are. It's I don't know. To me, it's interesting because, in my opinion, I think in general, fans are just getting smarter. They're caring about things that they didn't used to care about, like the salary cap, like the draft. Like people didn't care as much about the draft as they used to. People didn't care about the rule book as much as they used to. They didn't but being so connected on social
squads,
media.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to fall behind there. Plus the salary cap stuff is just interesting to me. And so
a unique fascination with it, right? Like it's just like it's interesting.
Can you cover this beat without doing that sort of stuff? Of course. Mm-hmm. There's plenty to write about and cover, and the general fan probably doesn't care too much about the 50% rule or void years or things like that. And those people need to be written to. And even when you're writing about that stuff, you kind of have to dumb it down in a way that most people can understand. Otherwise, you're going to lose everybody because it is so complicated.
Sure, but here's the other thing too, though. Having that fascination and being like, oh, look at what they did with Carlton Davis's contract. It leads you to what their next move might be, right? Yeah. Like it gives you the indication or at least the clue that, oh, well, look at what they did here with this 50% rule. Makes me think that there could be a contract extension like on its way. Like They did this in the here and now, but like this is setting them up for this. And I mean, those are the little, breadcrumbs, right?
Like, right. And like, listen, like we had seen, I think the 50% rule applied once or twice for the first time last year. And now we've seen them do it again, twice this offseason. And so now the next time they trade for a guy and you're like, oh my God, he has a $16 million salary. How are they going to fit that in the salary cap and still be able to maneuver? Well, now we know now we know they have another, tool bag in their toolbox. Tool bag. Is a tool bag a thing? They have another tool bag in their toolbox.
Steady as a mouse. I saw that Patrick Kane's not playing tonight.
What?
It's not good.
What did he do?
Have you looked ahead at the Red Wings schedule? Because it's not easy.
Yeah, the easy part of the schedule is the part that they sucked at. What?
Yeah. Well, so real quick, if we can just talk about hockey, can we talk about hockey for just 2 seconds? I know chat is like going to leave in mass exodus.
That's fine.
We're
towards the end anyways.
Yeah, I love you, chat. Like, we're going to be leaving here probably in the next 5-10 minutes. 10 games left. Okay. The interesting thing is that Philadelphia is in free fall as well. Like, the Flyers have not been playing well.
What? Is that just a thing in Philly?
I guess. I don't know. That's
Suck it, Eagles.
Matt Patricia effect. But the fun, I could tell you this later. But anyway, so long story short, Philadelphia not playing very good hockey right now. They're at 82 points. So the Wings are 3 points behind them. But right now, with the way that the playoffs are set up in the NHL, right, like 3 teams from each division make it, and there's 2 wild cards. Washington is creeping up on Philadelphia. So Washington is a point behind Philadelphia. So
and they have 2 games in hand.
And they have 2 games in hand, right? So Philly has also played 1 more game than the Wings have. Now Philadelphia's schedule way easier than both the Wings and the Capitals.
Dang it.
But I think for the Wings though, it's not we have to catch the Capitals or we're screwed. There's also okay, or Philly could just, fall flat on their face and the Wings could catch them as well. So
that would be much more satisfying to me.
Wouldn't it? The thing I hate about Washington, though, is that stupid minus 26 goal differential.
Yeah, I was looking at that now, too. I'm like, oh, my God, the Rings have a +5. They should be in the playoffs.
Right. Shouldn't we determine playoff seedings by that? But, yeah, I mean, Detroit, they do get to play Washington, I think, next week on Thursday.
I was very mad. I watched basically overtime of that game.
Yeah.
Which is why they lost, because I tuned in.
Don't put it
but
on
they had that 2-on-1, and then what was that pass? It was behind. It wasn't just at his skates. It was almost behind his skates.
No, I know. It's the DeBrincat thing, though. I know people are super excited, and DeBrincat's fun, and he's a goal scorer, but he's just not a consistent player. It sucks. There was a stretch too where the first 11 games of the season, DeBrincat, I think he was the leading point scorer in the NHL.
Really?
Yeah, through the first 10 or 11 games, DeBrincat was on fire, and then he goes through these lulls where he just gets lost in the shuffle because, he is a smaller guy, and he just doesn't drive a lot of offense 5-on-5. I think for over a 30-something game stretch, he had 4 5-on-5 goals, which is I've come to find out through hockey numbers and the way they look at quote unquote analytics and everything, 5-on-5 is where you determine who your players are and who your players aren't. Your guys that are going to be playoff contributors or guys who play well 5-on-5. Those are the guys you want on your team. There's room for special teams guys.
Sure.
It's
a
awesome
huge
to
part
have.
of the game.
Trying to think of what it's almost akin to. It's almost kind of like Jameson Williams down the stretch last year, right? Where it's it's awesome to have him as you can pull him out at any moment, right? And it's oh, sweet. But is there a down to down role for that guy?
So you're saying Josh Reynolds is more valuable than Jameson Williams in hockey?
In 2023, yes. Hopefully Jameson Williams picks up his 5-on-5 play this year.
There you go.
That's where I'm at with that. But yeah, I don't know. but their back end just sucks. Like the other thing, did you see the Petrie pass? That like, dude, shoot the frickin' puck. You're like below the dot.
Was that in overtime?
No, it was the Wings were down 3-2.
Oh no, I didn't.
And
I tuned in after Kane tied it up.
Okay, yeah, and Petrie just slides a puck like across the goal mouth basically, and it's like, and even him like in real time, you see him like, oh my god, what did I just do? That guy's butt would have been nailed to the bench. You're not getting another minute.
Coach Matthews,
Dude.
not holding back.
No, but that was the thing I was gonna say about Philly is like Tortorella, like he healthy scratched their captain.
Oh, jeez.
Oh yeah. Torts is a psychopath. Like Torts is a guy who like gets in fights with his players all the time and burns all of his bridges, and then eventually people sour on him and they're like, okay, we can't do this anymore. He's very much cut from the Mike Babcock cloth.
You beat me to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the Wings defense is bad. It's very bad. And that's where you hope that they can make strides.
I get sad when you talk about the Red Wings because you seem so down on them. But I know you love them. Like it's that whole like, you don't hate your country. You just wish your country was better.
Yes.
You just love it so much that you expect better of them.
It's very much you during the Patricia years with the Lions.
Just me?
I'm thinking, all right, I have this very like distinct memory, and I don't know why, but okay. I have this very distinct memory of you writing an article and publishing an article in the off season because I was in an Aerie with my girlfriend as she was shopping for a bra. But I was editing an article about how much you loved the Lions defensive line. Like they had just gotten Trey Flowers and Deshaun Hand was a thing. And you know what? They had got Snacks, like Snacks could and like nope.
Dang. Your old takes is exposing me right now? How did we get here?
No, that's not what I'm doing. The point I'm trying to make is that like you want them like you believe in it, you know? And it's like I believed in the Red Wings when they were hot, but I had this kind of thing in the back of my head where I was like, you can't run this hot. You know what I mean? Like you can't win all of your games scoring 3+ goals. Like that's not how things work.
Candlestick somehow already found. No. That's written by Jerry Mallory. Not me. It was an open thread. Do the Lions have the best defensive line in the NFL?
I don't. You did not go that far, but you were like, it could be the best in the division, I think.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it was like the division positional rankings or something.
Yeah, might have been, but yeah, I don't know why there's certain things that I've like
the addition
put in my old memory bank.
Mike Daniels might be the proverbial straw that breaks the back of the game. Oh, what did Mike Daniels like play more than 2 games for us?
Dude, we talked about Mike Daniels on the DJ Reader podcast with Mike Sands. Because
he played 9 games. I don't remember a single play he made.
I asked him a question about kind of like piggybacking off your question that you asked DJ Reader about the
Project Martin impact.
Yeah, about like either like him being a mentor or being like a mentee.
Yeah.
And he brought up Mike Daniels because Mike Daniels, after Detroit, I think signed with Cincinnati. And I was like, oh my God, Lions legend Mike Daniels.
Oh boy. Dark times. Man, but I do remember that feeling of a huge amount of optimism after that Snacks trade because he made a difference almost immediately. That second half of the season, they were a lot better defensively. And, you had Romeo, who was playing well at that point. You had other guys that I'm sure were okay. I don't remember. The roster back then.
Other guys that did something.
Deshaun Hand, I know. I mean, they were high on Deshaun Hand.
This was without a doubt going into 2019.
Yeah. And A'Shawn, like, listen, A'Shawn and Deshaun Hand are both still in the league playing 5 years later.
Like, yeah, I mean, let's be real. Okay. There was Snacks, right? And A'Shawn, like you said, and Deshaun Hand, people had high hopes for, but he only played 3 games that season. It was the injury thing.
Yeah.
The Romeo thing, but I think maybe part of that optimism was like, well, Matt Patricia needs his guys. Like, he needs specific types of players, and they went out and got Trey Flowers. It's like, okay, yeah, like it's all finally coming to fruition.
Nope. Anyways,
let's go Red Wings.
Let's go Red Wings. Johnny Mac, thank you for saying that over on YouTube. Appreciate you. Appreciate all you guys over on YouTube.
Appreciate YouTube.
But I think it's probably time to go. Wings are about to be underway, and basketball is happening, or is about to happen. Has that happened yet?
Basketball's happening as
College
we speak.
basketball. There you go. No Michigan teams anymore. Way to go, State and Oakland.
Oakland getting lumped into that.
Yeah.
And no mention of another team.
They did blow that game.
Oakland?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. And who's to blame for that?
Not the officials.
You, remember? You took all the blame on Twitter.
That's true. I'm very selfish like that. I see things only through my lens, that I have impact on games by just watching them.
Oh, Michigan State definitely blew that game more than Oakland. Well, I don't in
I didn't
different
watch it.
ways.
I didn't watch that one, so you can't put that one on me.
Okay. I'm not worried about the Michigan State game. I'm not a Michigan State fan. Go Grizz.
All right.
That Golke guy, have you seen any of that? Like, he's striking while the iron's hot, baby.
As he should.
He filmed. So after they win the game on, was it Thursday? Yeah, Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
They win the game on Thursday against Kentucky. There was an ad that he had the next day that he filmed from like one of the banquet rooms in the hotel that they were staying at.
What?
I think it was like insurance or something like that. I was like, dude, yes, get your bag, Mr. Went to Hillsdale College for 5 years. Is now a graduate student at Oakland.
And then he just like jacked up the most ridiculous shots in the final 7 minutes of the game and missed them all and missed a free throw. And
can we end the stream?
Sure. Leaves up 1-0 on the Caps. All right, there we go. That's how we're gonna end the stream. See you guys later. Maybe. I haven't talked to you guys about it, but maybe a Twitter space.
Saturday?
Maybe. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
All right, we'll get back to you on that.
Canadians are up 2-0 on the Flyers. Don't lie to me, Marty. I'm gonna check.
Let's go. Everything's coming up. Millhouse. Oh, wait, I don't want to be Millhouse. All right, see you guys later.